Yeah, Soumya, you can start.
Yes. Good afternoon to everyone present here. I, Soumya Vartika, Associate Editor at Team Bharat Samvad, extend a warm welcome to all of you to this session of the Indian Netizens Strategic Webinar Series. It is an honor to host this deeply relevant and timely discussion on the theme Sir Creek and Beyond, reimagining India's strategic position. Together some of India's most respected voices in national security, defense strategy, and maritime affairs. It is my privilege to welcome our esteemed panelists. First, we are deeply honored to be joined by Major General Dr. Rajan Kochhar, VSM retired, a distinguished military leader, strategic thinker, and one of India's foremost voices on defense preparedness and national security. Major General Kochhar also served as former Major General of the Army Ordnance Corps Central Command and a highly regarded security and strategic analyst. His decades of experience across India's operational theaters and his scholarship in national security studies make his presence invaluable today. Second, we extend a warm welcome to Group Captain Dr. Rajneesh Kumar, retired Director General, IITDO, veteran air warrior, and a noted strategic and security analyst whose work spans aerospace power, defense innovation, and emerging technologies. His expertise spans aerospace power, defense technology integration, and emerging strategic domains, all crucial for India's future security challenges. Third, we are delighted to host Captain Sarabjeet Singh Parmar, retired, a veteran Indian naval officer and leading maritime security analyst who has contributed extensively to India's understanding of naval strategy, littoral operations, and regional maritime dynamics. His deep understanding of maritime geopolitics adds immense depth to today's discussion. We are deeply grateful to each of you, sir, for accepting our invitation and taking the time to guide young students, scholars, and aspiring policy professionals. We are also privileged to have several distinguished individuals who have registered and joined us today. A warm welcome to Brigadier Lok Prasad Gautam, Professor Sukhvinder Kaur Multani, Professor V. Yog Jyotsna, Independent Defense Journalist Ms. Subhangi Pal, and Mr. Sandeep Rao. We thank you for your presence and for supporting this knowledge oriented initiative. The geopolitical landscape along India's western front has undergone notable shifts in recent months. Developments in the Sir Creek sector, combined with post Operation Sindhu signaling, have placed renewed attention on India's maritime and littoral readiness. This region, often overlooked in mainstream discourse, carries significant strategic weight, influencing surveillance, escalation dynamics, deterrence posturing, and sea service integration. In this context, today's discussion aims to unpack the operational, strategic, and technological contours shaping India's approach to securing its western maritime frontier. With tensions resurfacing and security environment evolving, understanding Sir Creek's relevance is not only important, it is essential. With this background, we now move into our panel discussion. I would first invite Major General Dr. Rajan Kochhar, VSM retired, to share his opening remarks and strategic overview on the present situation.
Uh, Thank you, Soumya, for this wonderful introduction and my warm welcome to my fellow panelists, Sarabjeet and Rajneesh, uh, and also to Aditya. Indian netizens is taking this wonderful initiative, I must say, and I must compliment the entire team of Indian netizens for uh, opening up this forum on a very contemporary topic, I would say that. Uh, Let us understand, you see, before I go into this present situation, it's important I will take you back to 1965 because 1965 threat perception has to be understood in the right context, and then you will understand the importance of Sir Creek. 1965, if you remember, 9th April 1965 was the move which Pakistan actually made into this sector in the uh, famous operation Desert Hawks, which led to Operation Gibraltar thereafter, sometime in August 1965. Uh, this run of Kutch 1965 battle, what I was going through in my research work has been under analyzed, because nobody has really analyzed this operation, and which started as a localized conflict in the marshy uninhabited lands. It was a testing ground for the Pakistan operational doctrine of that time. And none other, Major General Tikka Khan, the famous guy who was there in East Pakistan during the Bangladesh war. He was the mastermind of the operational plan. He was the GOC of the 11th Infantry Division. His division was tasked to occupy the disputed posts, because you are aware there is a dispute on this area. Uh, we will not discuss that dispute as of now, because our focus is on the future now, how to reimagine the Western maritime defense. He was preemptive. Pakistan was preemptive here, because our presence was not here. So the first lesson I want everybody to keep in mind is a presence is required, and we will be making the same mistake if we don't have a sizable presence in this area. So Pakistan observed, uh, carried out a little reconnaissance missions over a period of time before April 1965, and realized that most of the posts were unoccupied. Uh, and the aim was to push the Indian forces southwards, gain as much as you can in this area, and give a psychological perception of superiority. And that is why limited objectives, Pakistan came in here with the limited objectives with the aggressive intent. So, similarly, I visualize now also, because I will keep on analyzing the past with the present, so that our understanding is very, very clear when we are going to discuss what kind of defensive or offensive defensive umbrella we need to have in this area. Uh, Pakistan at that point of time carried out aerial reconnaissance, infiltration in terms of patrols was done, and most important, and remember here, the area was marshy. In spite of that, the Pakistan armored vehicles were here. So what the Pakistan did was they inducted the engineers here who built the assault tracks here, so that their armored columns actually could move easily into this area. The force composition which the Pakistan used at that time was regular infantry, armored, and the president's bodyguards, the 18th Cavalry Regiment, the artillery, the rangers, and patrols. These patrols were disguised as border guards, so that people will be under the impression that the Pakistan regular infantry and the regular army is not here. And basically, Pakistan was supporting this conflict from its bases in Hyderabad, Badin, and Khokrapar. Those three areas from where this thrust lines were being doing, and two specific areas where increased patrolling, Vigo Court and Kunjar Court, both those two areas where the aggressive patrolling which the Pakistan did, and their first attack was in a place called Sardar Post with two infantry companies. They launched the attack, and they found hardly any resistance because our forces were CRPF was deployed here. Can you imagine? At that point of time, the CRPF was here, the regular army was not here. So, the lesson what I'm trying to bring out is in my opening remarks is once we are going to discuss this area, this is likely to be a future battleground because, first of all, it's a quite uh, proximity to uh, the Pakistan forces in Sindh, a proximity to Indian forces in the run of Kutch and Kutch area in general. Secondly, what intelligence reports we have got so far, and I want you to note that the Pakistani Rangers have been replaced by the regular infantry battalions. There is a brigade strength here already deployed, and that is why you must be wondering exercise Trishul, why it was carried out in this area, because intelligence reports were there that the Pakistan forces have already come and deployed themselves in this area, and also the radars where Chinese radars have been placed in this area for surveillance. So you can imagine there were two things which were emerging, that a preemptive deployment of Pakistan has already taken place in this area. A Pakistani army is already here. Pakistani surveillance devices are already here, and Pakistani drones, drone uh, a company of drones is already here. So that is the threat perception as on date, where we find the Pakistanis already there, and therefore those kind of reinforcements in terms of Indian Navy, in terms of amphibious capability of the Indian Army, working in tandem with the Indian Navy and the Air Force. Uh, we have a Nalia airfield, which is 90 kilometers from here. I think that's the nearest airbase we have. So the naval aspects will also need to be discussed here. The Air Force aspects would also be need to discuss here, and I would be subsequently discussing the Army aspects. So these are my opening remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for that insightful analysis. Next, I request Group Captain Dr. Rajneesh Kumar, retired, to offer his perspective, particularly on the air maritime interplay, technological considerations, and broader deterrence framework.
Thank you so much, Soumya. And Jai Hind, everybody. And we have already heard intently to what the general has just said. He has, in fact, drawn the entire map of the area in front of our eyes. And things have really gone past because I had been in that area for quite some time when I was serving in the Southwestern Air Command. I visited Nalia and Bhuj, and these places are extremely sensitive as far as the Indian Air Force operations go. And there are various issues that they arose, and they've been handled at appropriate level within Air Force and even outside Air Force in Ministry of Defense and even at the Prime Minister's office. And I feel having understood the topography of the area and the peculiarities of the battlefield that this area offers, I think I'll slightly go 2-3 lines into the history of that. We knew that this dispute has been going on, and India claimed that they considered that middle of the stream will be the border for both the countries, whereas Pakistan said it should be east of Pakistan, which is closer to India. And the most important thing in that area is that we have got so much of reserves of oil and gas, and plus a lot of fishing is going on. And we know that more often than not, there are fishermen from both the sides who are getting caught by the opposite country, and they are in the jail for that. So this confusion is always there. But I think with the Honorable Defense Minister giving a call for this on this Diwali a few days back, I think this has opened a new arena for India-Pakistan in the India-Pakistan relationship. And I feel that we already had a lot of things between us and Pakistan going on, and for all the bad reasons. And this is the new front that is getting opened. While we talk of that, we also need to understand that any war or any conflict is not the responsibility of the armed forces alone. It is not the army war, it is not the air force war, or it is not the naval war for that matter. It has to be a team effort. And we all are awakened to this with this concept of jointmanship. And besides that, I think it's a shared responsibility of everybody, every agency in the country which is relevant in the context of international diplomacy. लड़ाई सिर्फ आर्म फोर्सेस की नहीं होती है, इसमें सारे के सारे पूरा देश लड़ाई लड़ता है. एंड आई एम वेरी कन्विंस्ड एंड आई एम श्योर दैट all are convinced about this. What has been happening for the last about so many years, Army was fighting its own battle, Air Force was doing its own operation, Navy was fighting its own operations in isolation. But now that for good, this sense has come that we have started talking in terms of jointmanship. So to my mind, there are certain points which Air Force is supposed to do, and there are certain points which the other two services, and in fact, the BSF also has an equally important role to play. Besides the Prime Minister's office and the Ministry of Home Affairs, Headquarter IDS, and the Ministry of Defense in general. So I think as far as the Air Force role goes, Air Force can manage this area by deploying long endurance UAVs like Heron and Tapas, and we have got so many of them. And this would be for constant monitoring of the tidal shift, because this area is peculiar geographically. A lot of sediment buildup is there, and movement of fishing vessels is there. So these are the normal things which we can deploy our UAVs, and we can start monitoring this area. That will start on the soft footing, I will say. And thereafter, perhaps we can integrate our PATI Maritime Reconnaissance Mission in the joint Air Force and Navy configurations. And that would be a possibility. And this would enable a common intelligence picture while maintaining the non-provocative profile. As I already, it is very required, because once you start doing anything, it provokes the other side. So without doing that, if we are able to achieve what we wanted to achieve, I think that would be a good example of statesmanship, or a soldiership, I'll say, or airmanship, whatever you would like to say, you can say that. And the use of AI-enabled anomaly detection also is responsible. I think it would be very useful to identify unusual patrol activity which keeps taking place there. And the new bunkers which are being constructed, or illegal fishing routes without any human bias. I think this will be giving us a very clear-cut picture of the entire thing. And then Air Force, the Air Force angles, I can say, having utilized all these facilities, I think we can support the fact-based diplomacy by feeding real-time verifiable data to the political leadership for de-escalating the entire thing and a conscious decision-making. Apart from that, in collaboration with MOD, now it is here the role of MOD comes. MOD should collaborate, should make sure that the DRDO, the DPSUs, and private industry, they collaborate with each other, and they develop indigenous sensors which are suited for tidal wetland. And in fact, we can use the UIR technology, that is in electro-optic and infrared technology. We have been using it successfully in the anti-Naxal operations in Jharkhand and other places. This has really given good results, and I think though area is similar, marshy area is there, and all these activities are there, we can utilize this technology to a great extent to our advantage. And then we can support the upgrade of synthetic aperture radar also, that can be used to enhance the visibility in fog, rain, and during the night operations. So all these things Air Force can do, besides contributing to the design of UAVs with vertical takeoff and landing facility. That capability is required, considering especially the terrain in which they are going to operate. And then all the airborne platforms can be integrated with indigenous GIS system, reducing dependence on the foreign geospatial tools. This we have been able to do it to a large extent, which was witnessed also during the Operation Sindhu. This was largely, I can say that this was a battle of air defense. The Army Air Defense and Air Force Air Defense was brought on Akash Seed system, and it has really given good results. And plus S-400, everybody knows what they have done. Apart from that, another thing is there, like MHA, Ministry of Home Affairs, and the headquarter ideas, they have to collaborate with each other, and they should conduct the joint ISR drills with the BSF, Coast Guard, and Navy, focusing upon the information sharing protocols. That would be inescapable requirement. And then we can hold tabletop exercises, inter-services exercises, and even involving the BSF also and the Ministry of Home Affairs in this, wherein we can simulate the misinterpretations in the Sir Creek zone, and which will reduce the chances of tactical escalation actually. And then institutionalize the communication SOPs across the agencies, and especially during the monsoon and cyclone periods. These SOPs need to be reworked out and actually given it to everybody and practiced also, most importantly, because we lay down the SOP, but if we are not able to practice it to our advantage, there is no use. So we should be doing that. And then we should give a capacity build-up support to Air Force Air Wing. We have an Air Force Air Wing which is headed by an Air Vice Marshal rank officer. He is called the IG operations, and there he has got a whole complement of the pilots and the technical officers taken on deputation from Air Force. It's a big established setup, and I think this has got a big role to play as far as the BSF operations in Sir Creek area go. And coastal police also can be involved in this, in interpreting the aerial reconnaissance. Coming to now headquarter IDS, I'll say that IDS should try and fuse the IAF ISR feeds with the Navy ISR equipment and the Coast Guard coastal radar chains. That is a requirement. I think Captain Sarabjeet Parmar would be able to tell us better about that. It's my feeling that if we do that in the most meaningful manner, I think this will be going to be really beautifully utilized to our advantage, to our tactical and strategic advantage. And the headquarter idea should also try and create a unified coastal operations room for the Kutch Sir Creek sector, specifically devoted to that only. It will reduce the siloed operation interpretation of data by different services. I am again talking about the jointmanship, and this is where it does not stop only at the three services. It takes into account the Coast Guard, it takes into account also the BSF and the Ministry of Home Affairs. And then we need to enable predictive threat modeling using combined tri-service inputs to preempt the misunderstandings. And I think headquarter ideas can also ensure full interoperability during high tide and monsoon seasons when the surveillance becomes operationally difficult actually. And now we come to Ministry of External Affairs and Ministry of Home Affairs. I think both these ministries can provide objective imagery-based dossiers for MEA negotiators to support India's maritime boundary claims. And we can deliver scenario projections on how shifting creek morphology affects legal claims under the UN clause. And we can give MHA and the BSF ground commanders, the field commanders, actionable intelligence on patrol routes. This is happening. This has started happening at the initiative of the National Security Council. But again, it needs to be made more meaningful, and more closer interactions should be there. Because generally we get caught in ministries, the Ministry of Defense and Ministry of Home Affairs and all that. We have to come out of this facility. We are coming out of this feeling, but I think still there's a lot of things are to be done to correct the mindset. And we should support the MEA and MHA. They should support the interministerial briefings with a lot of coordination and classified and validated air reconnaissance packets, in which Air Force will have a role to play. The ARC Aviation Research Center under Cabinet Secretariat also plays an important role, though directly they are not tasked to operate in these terrains. But then yes, there is a possibility using, because they have been doing this for years together. They are good in this art. Now, coming to BSF, first of all, I'll start by saying that there has to be a good synergy between IAF and BSF. It is there, the element, air element in the BSF is doing a good job for that, but then still a lot of coordination is to be there between Air Headquarters and the Ministry of Home Affairs. And BSF should keep ready the pool of helicopters and UAV assets for rapid deployment during unexpected troop movements or the suspicious activities as and when we notice in that area. And they should provide de-escalatory surveillance, ensuring that India obtains clarity without violating the airspace or creating provocation on either side. Then BSF should assist its forces during interdiction of illegal fishing and smuggling boats through overhead monitoring, and should also offer rapid situation report, the SITREPs, to the Ministry of External Affairs during diplomatic engagement. This is the need of the hour, because unless we do that, it will not be possible to handle the situation. And actually, potentially, it is opening a new arena for us between India and Pakistan relationship. Lastly, I think I'll come to a thing in which the political leadership of this country is strongly believing and doing. We are the emerging, we pride in saying that we are emerging Vishwa Guru. हम सबका हाथ पकड़ के चल रहे हैं. कोई भी कंट्री मुसीबत में आता है, चाहे वो हमारा दोस्त हो चाहे दुश्मन है, we are always going ahead with the open arms and helping them. And eventually this is playing an important role in what we do with the international relations with these countries. And in this, we have been deploying the IAF assets, especially the helicopter and the transport fleet. Transport fleet, especially the C-17s, were being deployed for airlifting standard personnel during floods, cyclones, and marshy collapses. And I think this can carry on here also, depending on which airfield they are going to operate. The Nalia and Bhuj, they are the closest airfields available near that area. And they should also assist the NDRF and BSF with aerial assessment of the breached embankments and inundated patrol posts. This is a very common feature in that area. I am nowhere I have observed this kind of thing, but this is actually peculiarity of that area. And accordingly, we must share humanitarian imagery with Pakistan through diplomatic channels. We have not been doing that for some reason, but I think we must do that. And there have been examples when Afghanistan war was on, and a citizen of Pakistan also was rescued by Indian Air Force. So that sent a good message. We believe in doing that. We are Indians. We are not gods, but we are Indians. We have been doing that, and we must continue doing that as far as possible. And then we must also promote the joint training and inter-agency coordination. You will observe that I am harping on same point and again. And lastly, I will come to the role of the political leadership. We are very lucky that we have a political leadership which is actually doing wonders as far as the India's foreign policy goes. We use both carrot and stick everywhere we are using, and we are succeeding to a great extent. And the leadership is focusing on supporting and building up the confidence building measures, CBMs. This is required. पाकिस्तान से दुश्मनी तो सारी हो गई, जिस तरह से हम चलते रहे अभी तक, बट उससे दुश्मनी से कुछ हल होने वाला नहीं, because times are changing now, everybody is changing and thought process is changing, and we have been doing so well on the humanitarian front, and I think we must do it more effectively to build the confidence building measures as far as possible. And we can offer the aerial verification mission under bilateral or multilateral monitoring framework to demonstrate the transparency. It is, I mean, it appears it is impractical, but it is not impossible. Given the relationship of India with Pakistan evolving over the years, it seems slightly difficult, but it's not that it cannot be done. And then we can also enable mutually agreed UAV
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Due to time constraints, can I stop you for a while?
I'll just take 15 seconds. And then we must share non-sensitive environmental and hydrographic data and facilitate the hotline-supported air operations between both the countries. This is a mandatory requirement. Difficult, but it has to be done. But I think the way we have been proceeding with Pakistan, we have got some reservations, and a lot of efforts are in hand. Future is not that bleak as we look at it. There are ways and means of doing it. We are doing it, and I'm very confident that we'll be succeeding in this. Thank you so much. Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, sir. Finally, I invite Captain Sarabjeet Singh Parmar, retired, to share his maritime focused assessment, especially on naval preparedness, littoral dynamics, and emerging grey zone challenges.
All right, thank you so much. And I fully agree with what General Kochhar and Group Captain Rajneesh have said regarding the magnitude of the problem and what we need to do and look at it. But again, if you look at Sir Creek, I mean, it's marshy area. Why would anybody take an interest there? What is it that benefits India and also Pakistan as to why are we, sort of arguing over this piece of land? I mean, you can't walk there, you can't do there, but there is merit that this area beyond the marshy area provides a means of strategic issues like strategic access. It provides a high degree of leverage for the military and the paramilitary forces to work for it, to operate from there. And why? Let's break it under what are the economics involved. So, fishing has been mentioned, and then, of course, that is the reason why we have a consortium of Indian fishermen crossing over the international maritime boundary line and vice versa. It is abundant in fishing. There are reports of oil and gas reserve, but exploitation remains an issue. And it's not that we have tried to resolve the issue with Pakistan. We have. In fact, we've also done a joint survey between the Indian Hydrographic Service survey ship and the Pakistan's equivalent, and maps were drawn. But then, of course, the relationships by both countries does not permit it to happen. So, having said that, let me state a case that India's claim on the whole of Sir Creek is historical. Now, I know in international law, historical claims are very, very difficult to prove. And of course, even our historic claims on the Gulf of Mannar is questioned by the US. But let me fight this case and try to convince whether, we can take it forward in a way. So, interestingly, this whole area was initially called the Banganga. And in before the partition days, it was a boundary line that separated the princely state of Kutch and the Sindh province. And there was a dispute between this princely state and the Sindh province over what is the border between both these parts of British India at that point in time. And then, of course, the British administration stepped in, and there's a resolution that was passed, and therefore the Sir Creek line, which over which the whole dispute takes place today, uh, took place. And there were certain, resolutions that came and they were passed by in 1914 that delineated the boundaries between these two provinces. But then, of course, with partition, the whole issue arose. The interesting point is when you talk Sir Creek with Pakistan, they are insistent in linking it with Jammu and Kashmir, which actually is a non-starter. We can resolve Sir Creek if they want to do it, but the linking with Jammu and Kashmir at every point when we talk Sir Creek it makes the whole discussion a little. It's not, you can't carry forward that dialogue when you bring in another region which is geographically, spatially, sort of separate. So, what is actually Sir Creek? So, Sir Creek is one of the creeks in the creek area. Most of the creeks lie on the Indian side. It's only the easternmost or the northernmost, if you look at the map there, which is Sir Creek. That is the point of contention. Now, interestingly, since I spoke about economics, the most oceanic extent or the point or the outermost point of the EZ between India and Pakistan is a point on a map which has been decided. But it is the start point from the land from which the EZ is measured, which is the Sir Creek point, which is in dispute. So if this, which you see my left hand here, is the a point, and this is the landward point, Pakistan says this point is here on the eastern side of Sir Creek. So you can see the distance, the line, and the advantage Pakistan accrues in the increase in its maritime zones. India says no, it is the old line that was joining as per the resolution, what we call is a Thalweg principle, that it is a navigable creek and therefore the mid navigable point of the line should be there. So for us, the point is here. So even this much of a distance will cause either Pakistan or India to gain or lose in maritime zones. And that's where the economics part comes in, because in the exclusive economic zone, those who are well versed with UNCLOS and have read about EZ will know that we have abundance of fishing. There is resources there. and of course, it is the coastal state's prerogative to exploit those, and no other nation can do it. So that is one advantage that comes from this landward point of the Sir Creek issue here. So we said the Thalweg principle, Pakistan does not agree, saying that the creek is not navigable. So that's one point of dispute. If that gets resolved, then perhaps the Thalweg principle of the midline of a navigable channel may help us out. So in 1956, the Prime Ministers of India and Pakistan decided to let's sort this out, and therefore we had the we had the survey agencies of both the countries, but the survey was never done. 1965 war has been covered by General Kochhar in quite a lot of detail, but there was a UN tribunal settled Creek. And in 19 Pakistan did not talk about the last mile coverage of the last few miles in the Sir Creek. And that is where this point is still remaining. And therefore, till the time that is not resolved, we are going to have a lot of issues on this. And if you remember in 1999, after we shot it down, whereas for Pakistan it was on the Pakistan side. So this problem of this line is going to fester into a major problem, and what we have seen recently are Pakistani incursions into this area, which General Kochhar had covered, sort of a reminder of 1965. And therefore, if we are not careful, we may end up in a situation where we'll again go into conflict over this area. It also provides the perfect point in which the non-state actors can either infiltrate or they can come in with explosives, because it's a very difficult area to monitor. The number of drones that are operating in the Sir Creek is not funny, operated by our Indian forces, including BSF from the Pakistan side. So as I said, the margin for error is very slowly reducing. Therefore, we need presence. I've operated from Nalia, and it will be interesting to note that when we talk about inter-services coordination, Nalia caters for operation of naval aircraft and also, when required, army aircraft. And if I remember correctly, and Group Captain Rajneesh may sort of I think support me on this, that when you take off from Nalia in the direction of Pakistan, if you don't turn left within a few minutes, you'll have entered Pakistan airspace. That is the proximity. We are eyeball to eyeball insofar as the aviation element is concerned, and we are almost cheek to jowl as far as the land forces are concerned. But it's not something that we have not patrolled this earlier. So the 1993 bomb blast that happened in Bombay, when the explosives had come via the sea, ended up in something called Operation Swan, in which the Indian Navy, the Indian Coast Guard, along with the state authorities, had deployed, and this continued for a very long time. I'm not sure if the same continues, but there has been presence. But yes, there is a sort of requirement in which we need to sort of look at inter-services. There is a certain structure which Group Captain Rajneesh had mentioned. I'm in agreement with that. But do remember, we also have somebody called the National Maritime Security Coordinator, whose job is to coordinate between the various ministries and offices and agencies. And therefore, if this is supposed to be under the NSA, and the NMSC is also working in that same under the same structure, then I think the interagency cooperation needs to be bolstered up. As I said, there is merit in working together. The number of drones that operate in that area is tremendous, and therefore we can have an economy of effort. We can use all our resources together out there. Now, if you remember recently, there was a news report that said that the Indian Navy had declared firing zones on south of the Run of Kutch and off the coast of Porbandar, which is well within our EZ, and Pakistan responded in making their own sort of a firing zone out there. So this sort of, this sort of exercises are continuous, and we recently held exercise Trishul, the tri-services exercise, which included not only the three services, but also involved central government agencies as well as the Coast Guard, the Border Security Force. And apart from operations from Sir Creek right into Gujarat and I think northward up to Rajasthan, we also had amphibious landings taking place on our own coast, obviously. And so therefore, this continuous presence is required. And this is where Sir Creek gains importance. So again, if you move now west, seaward from Sir Creek, and you can imagine the maritime zones that India has to look after and cater, and then Pakistan's maritime zones. Let me go a step further. So now we have submitted our claims for extension of our continental shelf. And therefore, if that point changes, you can imagine how our claims also can be sort of questioned by other nations or even by Pakistan. Is that when you have not decided the start point and your maritime zone is not fixed, how is the claim for the continental shelf going through? But that is a thing that the UN is looking at. It's been deposited. I have not read into it deeply, but I think Pakistan's claims are more or less settled. India's claims are being looked at. So this extension westward, especially where resources are concerned and on the continental shelf, is going to be the next area. And with seabed mining coming up and the amount of resources that are there and technology building up, the conflict is not only going to be for sovereign territory, it is going to be for resources, which are the sovereign rights of nations who under whose certain maritime areas are there. And therefore, this is a huge I would say something we have to look out. The three services have to work together along with other central agencies, the MHA, the MEA, all need to get involved. And I think we need to have a policy in place as to how are we going to manage the Sir Creek area. And I'll pause here for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for those valuable insights. We'll now transition to the question and answer session. Sir, due to the time constraints, may I kindly request all of you to keep your response within 3 to 5 minutes. Major sir, I'll begin with you. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh recently stated that one route to Karachi passes through the creek. Sir, what are the operational implications of such a direct and strategic statement? And in your assessment, how has India's military posture evolved to make this a credible deterrent in 2025?
Okay, thank you. Don't take political statements into the military domain literally. You see, at times leaders have to make this statement as part of the psychological warfare to deter the enemy from any kind of a misadventure. So, our basic aim should be right now. Once we are discussing this reimagined Western posture, that what is the reimagined Western posture to ensure that we are able to defend it at all costs, and if there is a requirement, as you said, to go across and uh, you project a threat inside Pakistan. Because always remember that to succeed in battle, you need to be preemptive. And if you are reactive, you will always be on the defensive. So I've always maintained that whenever we make our strategies have to be a more of an offensive defense strategy, not a defensive offense strategy. So there is a fine line in these two, and all our young researchers need to understand that whatever strategy we are talking in this forum today has to be based on offensive defense. The first strategic objective, which I feel is, and which the speakers have also alluded to some extent, is hold a credible mixture of forces here that raises the cost of misadventure. That means you should have your sufficient forces here in terms of your coast guards, in terms of your early warning systems. Because remember that any kind of a preemptive strategy has to be based on information, and for that you require a, a hybrid sensor mix of high frequency coastal radars here, and which are designed for sea clutter, which are designed for littoral clutter, and short shore-based electro-optical towers, a lightweight coastal, and an expanded network of automatic identification systems. So we have to bring in technology here, and I want to stress upon this: long-range maritime patrol aircraft, and we have to equip the coast guards with high tempo intercepts. More fast interceptors are required. As a matter of fact, the other day I was seeing some visuals of the Pakistan Navy chief visiting this area, and what they were actually showing was those hovercrafts kind of a thing which the Pakistanis have placed in this area. So we need to have these kind of hovercrafts which can operate both on land as well as the sea. And a second important aspect is the mine warfare capabilities, because in this area is quite capable for your mine laying activities. As a matter of fact, it becomes very vital to use mines in these narrow approaches. So I would reiterate that this kind of a strategy, shore based anti ship missiles, mobile launchers, coastal cruise missiles with your accurate C2 for your surgical strikes, and your non-kinetic tools like your electronic warfare, cyber, communication jamming. So I would like to see this area develop into a high-tech warfare zone, because unless you develop it like that, very little chance for you is there to first of all anticipate what the enemy is doing, and secondly to also look into the enemy, because once you look into the enemy you will find some weaknesses which you will be able to exploit. So I'll sum it up by saying is that you have to formulate an offensive defensive strategy, look into the enemy areas, see where the enemy is weak, and exploit that situation. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Rajneesh, sir has to leave us due to his prior commitments. Sir, before you leave, may I please request you to give your final remarks?
Thank you so much, Soumya. I am so sorry, sir. With your permission, I would like to leave. I have another engagement. Uh, my final remarks would be that I think we can treat it as a battleground, but I have a very strong feeling that this will open another front for us. We are already doing our fortifications on for a two-front war, and on the same sector, if one more ek morcha aur bhi khul jayega. So effort should be to avoid the situation as far as possible, and there are various ways and means of doing that. The adversary about which we are talking, it's dying its own death. It's a different matter that even while dying, he is trying to trouble the neighbor. But then there are ways and means of tackling it in the different manner. And I think India, being an emerging power, India playing on the front foot as far as the diplomacy goes, I think we stand a better chance of handling the situation. And yes, it is a marshy terrain. बहुत ज़्यादा importance इसकी नहीं लगती, except for the fact that a lot of fishing is going on in that area, and plus some oil and natural gas reserves are likely to be there. That's what these GSI and these people have indicated. But I think we can tackle it, and any way of tackling your enemy is to involve him in some activity on the mutually beneficial basis. And based on mutual benefits, I think it would be better to tackle this issue. That's what my feeling is, because militarily we can't solve every problem. We have to be practical. Everybody needs space. Everybody needs security. Everybody needs prosperity. And the neighbors are dying their own deaths. Maybe I think as bigger power, as a more powerful country, as a more progressive country, we can contribute a lot in this. which will also eventually help us in tackling this area also. Um, I think I'm very confident about it. I am positive about this whole thing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I'll move to Captain Parmar. Sir,
Yes.
given the dynamic and shifting nature of the Creek region, are our naval assets fast and responsive enough for immediate interdiction if a crisis erupts?
Yeah, that's how a navy looks at the threats and decides what it needs. So a hearty mix and match. So it's not only along in the Sir Creek what we can operate, and of course the Coast Guard has the assets that are deployable. So in case of peacetime, it is the Coast Guard and the BSF that's going to patrol that area, and therefore Coast Guard has got what are called air cushion vehicles or hovercrafts, as I've seen. What is somebody has said in the comments. What we need is also boats of that can move in very shallow depths, which the Sir Creek has got, but at higher speed. So therefore, it's a requirement. We have those assets in place. We operate with the Coast Guard. Coast Guard deploys in strength in the Sir Creek region. The BSF has also got similar sort of boats, and this the state governments or the state police also, after the coastal security scheme came up after the 2008 attacks in Bombay, they are also should be holding and operating shallow patrol. So what you have is a mix of law enforcement in that area, which is through the state police, the Coast Guard, and then, of course, is the first and second line of defense that comes up. That is why the BSF, the Army, Air Force, and the Navy. So, do we have the assets? Yes. How many do we have? Are they sufficient? Well, it's not that a bean count matters, but it's the operational availability. And therefore, when we look at defense budgets, which is always a constant issue, it is the responsibility of the services to ensure that they procure the items that address all the threats and challenges. Do we have enough? I would say yes right now. If we fall short of the mark, I don't think we will, but then it is a lesson to be kept in mind. And what are the sort of assets do you need? So, just technologies which are coming up is that you need fast movement. So, ACVs or air cushion vehicles are a very good idea. They can carry troops. A lot of them are now armed ACVs. They carry some heavy ordnance which can be fired, and therefore, we also have the shallow boats. But more than that, I think. Is the issue of what we call or let me bring in a term here called MUMT, manned and unmanned training. So therefore, you have to have a nice mix and match, and this is where all the agencies can actually integrate and work together, where you operate autonomous vessels, whether they are on the surface, they are small, they are agile, and they can be controlled from land or even from a boat or a ship at sea. And the similar is with the aerial vessels, whether they are AUVs or you want them autonomous or you want them to be controlled, man and manned. That is, I think, the in thing. And surveillance then forms part of it. So surveillance is not only from the smaller assets on ground, but also the bigger assets like P8I was mentioned, or even the other reconnaissance aircraft. We have aerostats again, which is a comment, a word I saw in the comment, is a good idea to have in that area. So you provide a matrix of surveillance, which will also provide you early warning. And let's also not forget space, where you have a bigger cover. So what you will need is an input coming from these types of equipment, and therefore that needs to be analyzed, and that is where you need to have an integrated command and control center, which I think when we look at the integrated commands which are supposed to be coming about, that should cater for it. And we need to always, remember, be ready. You take your eye off something which is soft, and then you will have a tragedy. And I think we've had many incidences in the past, and therefore we need to always be alert. And when you look at from the seaward side, obviously, yes, the same area can be monitored by bigger assets, but the bigger assets would be better utilized for more maritime activity in the bluer colors of the sea beyond the littoral coastline, which we have, for which, as I've already mentioned, we have adequate assets. And I'll pause here.
Thank you, sir. Now, I'd like to bring in a larger geopolitical dimension to this conversation. China's expanding footprint in Pakistan and dual use maritime infrastructure raises new concerns. Do you believe China is indirectly encouraging Pakistan to activate new fronts like Sir Creek to stretch India across land, maritime, and hybrid conflict zones? Major Sir, can we have your take on
Okay,
this?
okay, Major General, not Major. Okay, anyway, uh, so the ranks must be uh, conversant with you by now, I think. So the thing is, see, China will use every opportunity uh, to stretch India's resources, as has been mentioned by the panelists also, that Navy has a larger role to play in the strategic areas where, uh, especially the Arabian Sea area, where the threat perception is much more, and the force level of the enemy is also much more. Because here, what we find that if we relate to the Sir Creek area, uh, if the Coast Guards are given the wherewithal, the kind of equipment, the kind of surveillance, the kind of fast interceptors, uh, use of UAVs, and things like this, I think much can be achieved with the augmentation or the strengthening of the coast guards in this area. Naval to a lesser extent, I would say, and I agree with Captain Parmar when he says that Navy is should not be committed in a very large manner in this area, and it would serve the interests of the Chinese. See, what is happening today is, uh, let's not draw a comparison between the Chinese Navy and the Indian Navy, because there is no comparative index between the two navies. The threat perception of the Chinese Navy will also not be seen much in the Indian Ocean, as things stand here, because China believes in fighting a war through a proxy. And if Pakistan is able to deliver what China wants Pakistan to deliver, I think China would have achieved its aim. Therefore, I would feel that our immediate concern, and especially as the things are panning out in the subcontinent today, we are hearing about all these terrorist attacks taking place and the kind of surge in activities. Uh, we won't be too far away from the next war with Pakistan. And the next war with the Pakistan is going to be fought on all the three fronts: the Navy, the Air Force, and the Army. So we need to be prepared for that, and we have a strong Navy. Be rest assured that if we compare the force levels of the Pakistan Navy and the Indian Navy, or the Pakistan Air Force and the Indian Air Force, as well as the armed forces, we are much stronger to them in all terms and all perspectives. So to say that China is using Sir Creek to fritter our resources, I think our defense planners are also quite wise, and they have their wisdom not to succumb to this kind of pressure tactics, whatever China may try or do for us to believe. So, in the end, I would like to actually sum up to say that uh, never underestimate your adversary. China is your adversary, no doubt. But at the same time, right now, the battle is with Pakistan. And we need to vary of the Pakistani intent, and do not feel that Sarkri does not deserve the importance it deserves. It certainly deserves the importance, because any small victory for Pakistan in this area would be a great psychological boost to the reputation of the Pakistan army, And therefore it is extremely important to defend this area at all costs, to have a force level which is nearby poised, to have early warning systems in place, and to have a system of deterrence available to us so that we can protect this area at all costs. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I genuinely apologize for mistakenly addressing you as a major. I truly respect your rank and service, and I regret the error. Moving forward, my next question is to Captain Parmar. Sir, considering increasing Chinese involvement in the Arabian Sea, can the Indian Navy realistically operate in a two-front maritime pressure situation with Pakistan on one side and China on the other?
There is this constant talk of a two front war. So you talk about a two front war when you have two adversaries. So on the land border, we clearly have two adversaries. But in the maritime zone, I'm not sure if we can call China, let's not call it an adversary. How much of a threat do we think China is, or maritime China is, to India in the Indian Ocean region? I think that is something that needs to be understood, and let me elaborate on that a little bit. Is it a threat? I'm not so sure right now. I don't think it is. Is it a risk? Definitely. Is it a challenge? Most certainly. So let me give you an example. Is what is the biggest thing that a nation looks at? The ability to be present in a manner significant enough to influence events. Let me give the example of the US. So, when there is a crisis in the world, the first question that the US president asks is, where is the nearest carrier strike group? Because that is the maritime element. That is a potent force that can influence events in that particular region. The next question is, where is the next deployment? Marine Brigade, because they use it as or Marine Force. And so therefore they have divided the world into various combatant commands, and they have presence everywhere. But yet they need to move their forces around. Does China have that ability today? I don't think so. So let me pose a question here. So if you remember, sometime there was a big news about, India China bonhomie on the border, where China was looking at withdrawing forces or wanted to talk with India. What was happening in the South China Sea? They were conducting exercises and surrounding Taiwan at the same point in time. So if you look at China's theater commands, the Western Theater Command looks at India. The Southern Theater Command, which is more a maritime command, looks at the South China Sea. The Eastern Theater Command is responsible for Taiwan. And if I remember correctly, the Northern Theater Command looks at the Korean Peninsula. So, in order to have the number of assets available to influence events in South China Sea around Taiwan, they had deployed up to 100 ships, not including the amphibious force, by the way. 100 ships and 3 aircraft carriers. But where were the troops supposed to come from? Obviously, they will have to pull them in from other commands. And when you look at the Western Theater Command and look at the force levels that are supposed to be there, most of the forces are looking at internal security because they have instability in certain areas there. There is no theater command that is looking at the Indian Ocean region. If at all China moves in ships, it's going to move in ships which may operate under the Southern Theater Command, but given the command and control structure, more or less it is going to be controlled by the CMC or the Central Military Commission. That means Xi Jinping and his people who sit in the CMC. So let me get back to the point. I don't think we should look at a second front with China on maritime right now directly. We have a better control of this area, and let me say it with a lot of confidence that the moment any Chinese ship or submarine enters the Indian Ocean region, whether it's from the Malacca Strait, Lombok, or Sunda Strait, it's under surveillance. We know it's there. So this monitoring helps us continuously. When will it become a threat? Is when it enters with a potent force which will be centered on a carrier battle group. It will have adequate presence, a permanency time that it can support itself, given that its bases are in Djibouti. I'm not going to count Hambantota, but I'll take that on in question answers. Djibouti is one place where they have a base. Pakistan, Karachi, they are always entering and they can refuel this. So they have these two main ports from which they can operate without any hesitation. But do remember, in case of a conflict, the laws of neutrality kick in. So it'll be interesting to see how Djibouti will react. And let me give you a situation here. If there is a conflict between US and China, will Djibouti ask the US and China to remove its military presence from its land so that it can declare itself neutral? So there are a lot of questions that I've asked. There are no easy answers. We can speculate as to how it will operate. But the second maritime front with China is not going to happen, not immediately at least. And do remember the weaknesses that the Chinese PLA Navy has in the IR are the same weaknesses the Indian Navy will face if it starts operating in the South China Sea. So, what is the best thing a military commander will do? He will fight a battle at the place and time of his choosing. It's a very old principle of warfare. And therefore, if China wants to influence events, it better come in strength and it better have the ability to influence events. So, on the land front, two threats, yes, two fronts, definitely, because the international borders dictate so. But on the maritime front, not right now. I'll stop here.
Thank you, sir. Before we proceed, I would once again like to extend a warm welcome to our distinguished guest, Mr. Serge Popovich, Ms. Shubhangi Palwe, Mr. Sandeep Rao, and Brigadier Lok Prasad Gautam. We are honored to have you with us. My next question goes back to Major General Kochhar. Historically, India has often relied on restraint and diplomacy in Western maritime theatre, but given Pakistan's changing behavior, is it now time for India to adopt a more proactive maritime border strategy rather than a reactive one?
Can't hear you, so I think you're
Okay.
muted.
Soumya, it's a very good question. See, all strategies are based on capability, and your intent and capability has to match each other if you want to have that kind of an intent. For example, if you say that I would like to capture a Pak occupied Kashmir, a POK, then you must have the capability in terms of your forces, in terms of your numerical superiority, in terms of your weapon system, in terms of your technology. And if you have that capability, yes, for sure you be preemptive and do not be reactive. But, there is a gap. So whenever there is a gap, whether it is on the naval side or the military side or the Air Force side, the gap in capability and intent has to be reduced. And for that, I would I've always been actually advocating that the budgetary provisions, what the defense budget is being earmarked for the armed forces, we've time and again we have been raising this issue in various forums. 1.9% of the GDP, and ultimately if you take out the pensionary part of it, for the capital acquisition it comes to only 1.2% of the GDP. So it is only around 1.02 lakh crores. It's almost around 26 to 27% of the overall budget. So if I take that as a figure, and if you need to modernize your forces in terms of the relative strength of your adversaries, and here, uh, mind you, though Captain Sarabjeet has mentioned that we don't have a maritime threat from China, but we definitely have a land threat from China. So, in case we have to match the adversary on the northern borders, we have to match the adversary on the western border. So we have two live borders in front of us today, the western as well as the northern border. And therefore, technology has to play a very, very important role. You saw how technology was used in terms of BrahMos, in terms of our Akash Tir systems, our S-400, our Akash missiles and all. So we have to blend this technology into a far potent one, and we need to graduate today to hypersonic, because that is the need for the hour. And we are talking about direct energy weapons also uh, coming into the matrix. The space warfare and the cyber warfare is taking a very, very prominent shape. So I'm uh, bringing all these aspects into this question of specifics, which you asked me about a preemptive versus a reactive scenario. The preemptive scenario can only take place when you are convinced that you're going to win the war. You will only like to initiate a war with a nation when you're totally convinced in the mind that you are going to defeat that nation. And in case you are looking for a stalemate, or you are looking for a 14-day window that somebody will come and broker a ceasefire, like Trump has been claiming, then you cannot be preemptive in your thought. And that is why most of our war doctrines in the armed forces are not based much on a preemptive scenario. They are based much on a reactive scenario, based on a much defensive scenario. So, in case you want to get into the offensive, uh, then you need to be strong. And for being strong, I've already actually mentioned, but the capability has to be strengthened. So thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. We now open the floor to the audience for asking their questions. We request the audience to keep their questions very short and concise. If any of you have any questions, please raise your hands.
Soumya, while they gather their thoughts, I just wanted to add a few lines to the question posed to General Kochhar. Is that if I got it, is our military reactive or is it strategic? If we are a reactive military, then we would have lost all the wars we fought. One, okay. I think there's a lot of strategic foresight that goes into it. There are strategy documents that exist. I would disagree with some Western analysts when they say that India does not have a strategic culture. Well, the military does have one. We have had our operational plans and strategies in place. So that is why we are, as General Coach has said, we may be accused of having a defensive mindset, but that is what all good, stable nations do. And therefore, that is why it is called the Ministry of Defense. And those of you who are enjoy reading history, have a look at the nations who used to call them ministries of war. Has caused a lot of problems. Maybe World War One, World War Two was a sort of a reason why the ministries of war went into played into action by various nations. So, I would like to state for the record that we have a lot of strategic thought. We are not reactionary. And I'd like to add one more term to what General Kochhar has said of preemptive, and that is called anticipatory self-defense. Those of you who enjoy legal terms and legal discourse in lawfare, I would urge you to study the genesis of anticipatory self defense. It does not find mention in many strategic literature or documents by nations, but it is a term that can be usefully used and defended. And I'll stop here.
Thank you, sir. Does anyone from the audience have any questions? Since we don't have any audience questions, may I now request our panelists to please share their final remarks?
Okay, thank you, Soumya. I'll be very, very brief. First of all, I want to compliment you and the Indian netizen as well as the panelists. Some very wonderful thoughts have actually come about. A thought provoking, tangible, and actionable. And I would recommend the Indian netizen to make a small 2-page brief on this webinar, and which I would like to send to the PMO, because it's very important that these kind of deliberations uh, by reputed experts are documented for posterity. And therefore, the key takeaways, I would name three major takeaways from this webinar is a very important topic. Sir Creek has been selected, which is often not talked about and relegated to our strategic thought. So please don't make the mistake you made in 1965 war by relegating it for even a discussion in the war series, because in none of the discussions in the Indian Army I can say that this Sir Creek battle has been well documented or well discussed, I would say that. So that is a point number one, that uh, need to understand the importance of this area. Second is don't underestimate your enemy. Don't underestimate it's a marshy land. Don't underestimate that Pakistan will never try to get into it. After all, what is there to actually gain from this? So, the second important is don't underestimate the strategic value of this place, of this objective. And lastly, is any small victory, even if it is in a place like Sir Creek, has a great psychological gains and a great narrative to be built upon by the adversary to project that he has vanquished a much superior nation. So always remember 1965, one of the aims of Pakistan was to send a message across that after 1962, the Indian army was weak and Pakistan was able to inflict a, a major defeat on the Indian army in the Sir Creek area. Unfortunately, the calculations of the Pakistanis went haywire, and the riposte by the Indian army uh, sent them back. But remember, don't take your adversary lightly. So I have tried to sum up the importance of this entire discussion in these three important aspects, which I think all the researchers here must take note of. Thank you very much, Jain.
Thank you, sir. I see somebody from the audience. Dhanvantri, you can please continue.
Dhanvantri, we are waiting.
Yeah, hello, Abhinav. Go ahead. If
Uh,
Dhanvantari is not here, Abhinav, please go ahead.
yeah, am I audible?
Yeah, yeah, Abhinav, you're audible. Yeah.
Uh, Good evening, sir. First of all, thank you for such an enlightening discussion. So, my question is that in your opening remarks, you mentioned that the region is likely to be a future battleground because of the proximity and the intel reports, which suggest that Pakistan has deployed a lot of its forces and Chinese radars have also been deployed. So, by any chance, do you think that Pakistan military is this entire infrastructure development which is happening, do you think that Pakistani military is following the there has been a shift towards salami slicing tactics in the maritime gray zone, which is the Sir Creek area? And if that is so, what are the implications for India's the naval defense, the maritime defense that is there?
Abhinav, see, maritime question I will deflect to my co-panelist. He will answer it,
Sure,
and
sir.
I will actually answer your first part of the question. The first part is that why should an enemy reinforce an area when the enemy does not have any intentions or any a strategy to implement in this area. So you need to understand point number one, that why the Rangers were replaced by the regular forces, why the surveillance equipment was brought in here, and why the you advanced radars as well as drones have been sighted in this area. So uh, we actually in the army we call it the battle indicators. Before a start of a battle, you will find a hectic surveillance activity taking place in an area, a movement of patrols happening in an area, and reinforcement of defenses taking place in an area. So when you see these three activities taking place, you cannot let your guard down. The enemy may be trying a diversionary tactic. He may not be wanting to strike here, but at the same time, he is making his intentions very clear to you. So, you, as a military analyst or as a military thinker or as a military commander, you have to take cognizance of these activities and reinforce yourself for any kind of a misadventure by the enemy. As I brought to you earlier, you mentioned about salami slicing and all that. See, any small ingress in this area, because it's a disputed area, always understand one thing. China also gets into a disputed area, and there we actually can't say that China has launched an attack on our territory. So, in a similar kind of a situation here, Pakistan may try to make an incursion into a disputed area and say that this area does not belong to India, and India has got no right to say that we have ingressed into the area or the Indian uh, occupied area. So that is why I say that whatever the disputed areas are there, they are the most sensitive, and we need to be on our watch and guard. I hope I have answered your question.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll take it on from the maritime side. I would not call it salami slicing, Abhinav. I don't think that sort of an analogy would work in a bilateral area where the dispute between two nations. But I would urge you to remember the policy of Pakistan by Zia, death by a thousand cuts. So while they are reinforcing that area, is sovereignty supreme? Yes. Do we take it lying down? No. So we must be alert, we must be ready. But let me also raise this question, is that if the build up and there is so visible, and it's almost open to the naked eye because it's flat land, it's, the surveillance is easier, there is no forest cover, there are no trees, they're there. Is this a deception plan? Is the real target somewhere else? So therefore, while we keep our eyes on Sir Creek area, we have to be alert all along the border, especially where we feel there are vulnerabilities, and therefore we need to keep our ears and eyes open. And if the terrorist attacks or the explosion that took place in Delhi recently is any indicator, and the amount of explosives that have been captured, there is a possibility that we have actually thwarted a major problem from erupting in the bud itself, although we did lose lives. I'll stop here.
Excuse me, sir. May I have a right to say something? This side Dhanvantri Pandey.
Yeah, Dhanvantri, we have been waiting for you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a great honor for me. First, I would like to say thank you, Mr. Sarabjeet sir and Major General Rajan sir. Thank you so much. Sir, I belong to the Kanpur city. My state is Uttar Pradesh, and my field is totally related to blockchain developer science. I'm a blockchain developer science from IIT Kanpur, and my experience is also related to a sports field. I'm a martial arts taekwondo coach and national referee. So my question is, how I can contribute myself from your organization?
So, very interesting. Uh, Dhanvantri, what are your passions and interests? It would much depend
Yeah,
upon.
Okay, okay. I'm answering you, sir. This is very interesting question from your side. From childhood, I wanted to become a part of an Indian Army, and also interested and enthusiast for the CIA services and DIA regarding all the sports and survival tactics, adventurous activities. That's why my qualifications also meet like that. So I would like to pursue accordingly, sir.
So you please get in touch with Aditya, and
Okay.
we will make sure in some capacity your talent is also made useful uh, for the security of the country, because we need people like you who are
Thank you so much.
passionate, who are nationalistic, and who are patriotic. And definitely we will give you an opportunity in some way or the other. Okay.
Th- Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. It's really a great honor for me, sir.
Soumya,
We
we
have,
can, yeah, continue.
yeah, we have one more question. Krishna, you can continue.
Okay, am I audible?
Yeah, yeah, Krishna, you're audible. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you for the valuable insight. Insights. I just want to ask that as that we have covered most of the military aspects, what are the diplomatic posture or the negotiative approach that we should be taking in the future? That I know understand that we are in a strained relationship with Pakistan as of now, but in the future, what should be the negotiative approach that we should be taking? Should we maintain what we have been following for the past years, or should we take a much more diplomatic, or what should India be taking in negotiating approach? That's it. Thank you, sir.
Captain Sarabjeet, I think you can take it on.
Thank you, sir. So the diplomatic endeavors are always on, Krishna. If you look at the the discussions that take place in the UN, and whenever anybody has any country, nation for that matter, supports Pakistan's stance on JNK or passes a statement on JNK, we actually have a response ready, and I think that response has become more stronger and has become more cogent in the years that have gone by. And on the diplomatic side, remember, diplomacy is niceties, and so therefore you have to be polite even though you want to be rude, and I think we're doing quite a good job there. So the narrative has to be pushed both by the diplomats and by the military, and therefore it is there are two arms of the government that they have, is outreach through the diplomats and strategic posturing and military posturing and defense diplomacy by the military, which is actually going to help. How much has been successful? Well, that we can discuss later, because it's a never ending debate. So therefore, how much more can we go diplomatically? I'm not too sure, but I'm sure the mandarins who sit in the Ministry of External Affairs are well versed, and I think we've got a terrific team, even starting from the foreign minister downwards, and they're doing a terrific job, as is the military.
Soumya,
With that, we conclude the question answer session from the audience. Parmar sir, can we have your final remarks now?
Sir Creek is a sovereign part of India. Therefore, any attempt to um, impact our sovereignty or to question our sovereignty or even step on the sovereignty will be dealt with. Can we lax in Sir Creek? No, we can't. And as I mentioned, that we need to be alert. There was a time when I used to say in many international debates and conferences that we have a very active western border and a lively northern border. Now we have an active western and a northern border. We cannot let our guard down at any given time. There has to be an all nation approach. The agencies have to work together, whether they are intelligence, military, paramilitary, or even law enforcement for that matter, within under the center and the state. And there's a saying that whenever history repeats itself, the price doubles. If we have not learned a lesson from 65, General Kochhar has mentioned it, then I think we will come out with not too happy a result. But if we have learned our lessons, if we are prepared, if we are well prepared, if we have foresight, And I think we can stem the problem in the bud, which sort of we have done. I think the Tri-Services Exercise Trishul, which I mentioned, remind me of Operation Brass Tacks way back in 1986. I was a midshipman. I wasn't even a commissioned officer. I had never seen such a large force at sea. We had the LSTs, the landing ship tanks had come from the Eastern Command, and we had 86 ships at sea. And the whole of the Western Army Command, General Kochhar, you would have been participant in Prastack at some point in time. I mean, Pakistan was highly unsettled because they didn't know, are we doing an exercise or are we going to cross the border? So this Trishul reminded me of brass tacks. So once in a while, you need to do some strategic posturing, and I think this exercise was it, especially coming on the heels of what has happened in Sir Creek and also any adventurism that Pakistan may have liked to have undertaken with or without the support of other nations. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. As we come to the end of this session, I would like to express our heartfelt gratitude to our distinguished panelists, Major General Dr. Rajan Kochhar, VSM retired, Group Captain Dr. Rajneesh Kumar retired, and Captain Sarabjeet Singh Parmar retired, for sharing such profound, strategic, and thought-provoking insights. Your perspectives have not only enriched our understanding of the complexities surrounding Sir Creek and India's western maritime frontier, but have also inspired students and young professionals to think more deeply about national security and strategic affairs. I also thank all the participants who joined us today, including our respected attendees from academia and the defense community. On behalf of the Indian netizens, we appreciate your continued support and interest in meaningful dialogue on India's strategic challenges. I also extend my gratitude to our founder, Aditya Chaudhary, Managing Director, Rishabh Khatri, and Content Director, Kushagra Kushwaha. Hope to see many of you again at 7:30 p.m. for our next webinar on Delhi Bomb Blast. Thank you, everyone. This is Soumya Vartika signing off. Have a great evening, everyone. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank
very
you so
much.
much, sir. All Jai Hind, sir.
Jai Hind, Jai Hind, Aditya. It was a pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir.